The massive space station Nexus Prime hung in the void like a metal city among the stars. Its silver towers stretched outward in perfect spirals, while thousands of ships moved around it like busy insects. Inside the central chamber, the Galactic Council was meeting to decide the fate of humanity. Jake Morrison walked through the long corridors toward the council room. His black suit was simple compared to the flowing robes and shining armor of the alien delegates he passed. Behind him, Captain Lisa Hayes kept pace in her Blue Earth Defense Force uniform. Her hand stayed close to her weapon, but she tried to look calm. The council chamber was huge. 47 different species sat in curved rows that rose up like a theater. At the center stood a tall platform where speakers would address the assembly. The air smelled of different alien atmospheres mixed together through the life support systems. Council Speaker Thyros stood at the platform. He was Zephyrian, with pale blue skin and long arms that moved like water when he talked. His voice came through the translation system in perfect English, but with a cold tone that made Jake's skin crawl. "The human delegation will approach," Thyros announced. Jake walked down the long aisle between the alien representatives. Some watched him with curious eyes, while others looked at him like he was something dangerous. The Vorthon delegates sat together in their mechanical suits, red lights blinking where their eyes should be. The insect-like Mantari clicked their mandibles as he passed. When Jake reached the platform, Thyros looked down at him. "Ambassador Morrison, you stand before this council to answer for humanity's crimes against galactic peace." Jake said nothing. He had learned long ago that speaking too early in these meetings was a mistake. For the past 5 years, your species has expanded beyond the boundaries set by this council, Thyros continued. You have established colonies in disputed space without permission. You have interfered in conflicts that were not your concern. Most disturbing of all, you have formed alliances with species that this council has deemed unsuitable for galactic membership. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Jake noticed that not all of them sounded approving. Near the back, he saw Ambassador Keto of the Althari people. The small, gray-skinned alien gave him the tiniest nod. "The Kithara refugee situation was a perfect example," spoke Vexitar, the lead Vorthon representative. His mechanical voice buzzed through the speakers. These creatures were fleeing their homeworld after their sun began to die. The council had decided to relocate them to designated refugee worlds where they could be properly supervised. Instead, humanity offered them full citizenship and helped them establish their own colonies. We also found evidence of human military installations in the Outer Rim territories, added Zarath, a Mantari delegate. These installations were built without council approval and represent a clear threat to galactic security. Jake finally spoke. "The Kithara were dying on your refugee worlds. Your designated planets couldn't support their biology. We offered them worlds that could." "That was not your decision to make," Thyros snapped. "The Council's wisdom has guided this galaxy for over 10,000 years. Your species has existed in space for barely 2 centuries. Yet you act as if you know better than civilizations that were traveling between stars when your people were still living in caves." Lisa Hayes stepped forward slightly. Jake held up a hand to stop her. "Furthermore," Thyros continued, "your military expansion threatens the balance of power that has kept peace in this galaxy. The Council has decided that humanity must be contained before your reckless behavior leads to another galactic war." The chamber fell silent. Jake could feel the weight of dozens of alien gazes upon him. "These are the Council's demands," Thyros announced, reading from a glowing tablet. "Humanity will abandon all colonies beyond the Sol system and 3 designated nearby worlds. All human military installations outside this zone will be dismantled. All non-Council species currently under human protection will be transferred to Council oversight. Humanity will submit to regular inspections and will not expand beyond their designated territory without explicit council permission. Jake felt Lisa tense beside him. He knew what she was thinking. The demands would essentially make humanity prisoners in their own corner of space. "You have 48 hours to accept these terms," Thyros said. "Failure to comply will result in economic sanctions and potential military action to enforce compliance." The chamber waited. Jake looked around at the faces watching him. Most seemed satisfied, as if this outcome had been decided long before he arrived. But in the back rows, he saw other expressions. The Althari looked worried. The aquatic delphine. Delegates moved restlessly in their water tanks. Even some of the smaller species that rarely spoke in council sessions seemed uncomfortable. Jake turned back to Thyros. "We understand your position." Thyros smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Excellent. I assume you are prepared to sign the compliance documents immediately." "I need to consult with Earth," Jake said calmly. "You mentioned 48 hours. We'll need that time to coordinate with our colonies and military forces." "Of course," Thyros said, though he seemed annoyed. "The Council is generous in allowing time for an orderly transition." Jake bowed slightly. "Thank you for your generosity." As he turned to leave, Jake caught sight of several alien delegates. Ambassador Keto touched his chest twice with his right hand, an Althari gesture of support. The Delphine representative, choral singer Naya, created a pattern of bubbles in her tank that Jake recognized as a message of friendship. Even Krex, the massive Nexari delegate, gave him a slow nod. Jake and Lisa walked back through the chamber, toward the exit. The conversations around them had already turned to other matters, as if humanity's fate was settled and no longer worth discussing. In the corridor outside, Lisa finally spoke. "Sir, those demands are impossible. If we abandon the Outer Rim colonies, the Draconis hegemony will move in within months, and the Cathara will die if we turn them over to Council refugee camps." Jake nodded. "I know." "Then what do we do?" Jake looked back at the council chamber one last time. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see the alien delegates talking among themselves, probably already celebrating their victory over the troublesome humans. "We comply," Jake said, quietly. Lisa stared at him. "Sir?" "We give them exactly what they asked for," Jake continued as they walked toward their shuttle. "Humanity will abandon the Outer Rim colonies, will dismantle our military installations, will leave council space completely. But the colonies, the people we've promised to protect..." Jake stepped into the shuttle and waited for Lisa to follow. As the doors closed, he looked at her with a slight smile. "I said we'd leave council space, Captain. I never said we'd leave our friends behind." Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the command center high above Earth, watching dozens of screens that showed ships moving throughout human space. Each screen told part of the same story. Humanity was leaving, just as the Council had demanded. Transport ships loaded with people and cargo moved between planets like a steady stream of metal fish swimming through the black ocean of space. But Kate knew something the Council watchers did not know. The ships carried more than just humans. Dr. Peter Collins sat at his desk in the Xenological Institute, typing messages that would never appear in any official records. His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard as he coordinated with representatives from dozens of species that the Council had either ignored or rejected. The Kithara had already agreed to come with humanity when they left Council space. So had the insect-like Chiri, whose hive queens had grown tired of Council restrictions. On their breeding rights, the aquatic delphine were harder to transport, but their representatives had asked for help reaching new ocean worlds beyond Council reach. Each species brought something valuable. The Cathara were master biotechnicians who could grow living buildings and ships. The Chiri were incredible engineers who could build anything if given enough raw materials. The Delphine knew secrets of underwater farming that could feed millions of people on water-rich worlds. Captain Ryan Foster walked through the cargo bay of his transport ship, checking the loading manifest one more time. To any council observer, his ship looked like it was carrying standard colony evacuation supplies, food, medical equipment, and personal belongings. They would not notice that some of the cargo containers had special atmospheric controls for species that breathed different gases than humans. They would not see that the manifests listed family pets that were actually young Chiri workers or Althari children. The mining platforms throughout the Outer Rim were shutting down exactly as the Council had ordered. But Council observers only watched the platforms go dark. They did not follow the cargo ships that carried the platforms away piece by piece. Each mining station was carefully taken apart and loaded onto transport vessels. The massive processing, equipment, the power generators, the life support systems, even the hull plating were all saved and transported to secret coordinates beyond the edge of Council space. Military installations followed the same pattern. Colonel Amy Brooks supervised the dismantling of Forward Base Kepler, humanity's largest military station in the disputed zone. The Council monitors watched as the weapon systems powered down and the defensive shields went offline. What they did not see was that every piece of military technology was being carefully packed and moved rather than destroyed. The evacuation convoys were enormous. Hundreds of ships moved in organized formations toward the edge of Council space. The Council. Watchers counted them and confirmed that human population numbers matched their expectations. What they could not count were the non-human passengers hidden in cargo holds, listed as supplies, or traveling in specially modified transport containers. Jake Morrison made his final rounds of diplomatic meetings during the evacuation period. To the Council representatives, he appeared to be a defeated ambassador going through the motions of an orderly withdrawal. But in private meetings with friendly species, he was actually collecting intelligence and resources for humanity's real mission. Ambassador Keto of the Althari met Jake in a small cafe on Neutral Station Gamma Prime. The gray-skinned alien pretended to read a data pad while Jake drank synthetic coffee at the next table. Without looking up, Cato whispered, "The star charts you requested are in your coat pocket now. They show 17 uninhabited systems beyond the rim that have planets suitable for colonization." Later that day, Jake had lunch with Coral Singer, Naya, the Delphine representative. Her water tank was wheeled up to his table so they could speak privately. "My people have prepared detailed biological surveys of ocean worlds in the frontier regions," she said through her translation device. "We want to help humanity establish aquaculture centers that can feed your new colonies." The most important meeting happened on the observation deck of his transport ship. Krex, the massive Nexari delegate, had requested a private farewell meeting. The rock-like alien stood nearly 3 meters tall and spoke in a voice like grinding stone. "My people, remember when we were refugees fleeing the Vorthon expansion wars 2,000 years ago? The Council gave us empty worlds and told us to be grateful. Humanity offers something different. Partnership instead of charity." Krex handed Jake a small crystalline device. "This contains our terraforming technology. With it, you can turn dead worlds into garden planets in months instead of decades. Use it well." Meanwhile, the real evacuation was happening in secret. Dr. Elena Rodriguez led teams of scientists who had been working for months to identify suitable worlds beyond Council space. Using long-range probes disguised as routine exploration missions, they had found dozens of planets that could support human and alien life with minimal terraforming. The first convoy ships were already arriving at these coordinates and beginning the work of establishing new colonies. Unlike the regulated, sterile settlements that the Council preferred, these new worlds were being built as true multi-species communities, where humans, Cathara, Delphine, Chiri, and others would work together as equals. General Nathan Clark commanded the military aspects of the evacuation from his flagship. To Council observers, it looked like humanity was simply moving their forces back to Earth and the three permitted worlds. In reality, Clark was executing the largest military redeployment in human history. Every ship, every weapon, every trained soldier was being moved to staging areas beyond Council space where they could begin building new defensive positions. The logistics were incredible. Supply ships carried everything from industrial fabricators to seed banks containing genetic material from thousands of Earth species. Medical transports brought not just human patients but also Kythera biotechnology and Delphine aquatic medical techniques. Even entertainment and cultural materials were preserved. Human music, alien art, literature from dozens of worlds. Council Speaker Thyros watched the evacuation reports with satisfaction. Humanity was leaving exactly as demanded, taking their strange ideas about equality and multi-species cooperation with them. The galaxy would return to the proper order that had maintained peace for 10,000 years. But on the edge of Council space, something new was being born. The first ships had already arrived at coordinates that would become New Geneva, humanity's first major settlement beyond the rim. Construction crews worked around the clock to build landing pads, life support facilities, and communication arrays. The new colony would be unlike anything the Council had ever seen. A place where species worked together not because they were forced to, but because they chose to. As the last human ships crossed the boundary into the unknown regions beyond, Council space, Kate Sullivan sent a coded message to Jake Morrison. Phase 1 complete. All personnel and equipment successfully relocated. Beginning Phase 2 construction immediately. Jake smiled as he read the message. The Council had gotten exactly what they wanted. Humanity was gone from their space. They just had no idea what humanity was building in the darkness beyond their reach. 6 months had passed since humanity disappeared from Council space, and the silence was complete. Where human colonies once thrived, only empty worlds remained. The Council's inspection teams found no trace of human presence, no hidden bases, no secret installations, no abandoned equipment. It was as if humanity had never existed at all. Council Speaker Thyros reviewed the final reports with deep satisfaction. The troublesome humans had been removed from the galactic community, and order was restored. The other species would see what happened when someone challenged Council authority. Peace would continue for another 10,000 years. But beyond the edge of known space, something extraordinary was taking shape. Commander Alex Turner stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station and watched the construction crews work. The station was massive, bigger than anything the Council had ever built, but it was also different. Instead of the cold metal corridors and sterile chambers that marked Council architecture, New Geneva felt alive. Kythera biotechnology had grown, living walls that cleaned the air and provided soft, natural lighting. Delphine aquatic gardens brought the sound of flowing water to every level. Cheery engineering had created transportation tubes that moved people and cargo with incredible efficiency. The station wasn't just a human outpost. It was truly multi-species. In the central plaza, human children played alongside young Kythera who looked like walking trees, while cheery workers built new sections with their 4 arms moving in perfect coordination. Delphine swam through transparent tubes that ran throughout the station, able to visit any section without leaving their aquatic environment. Dr. Elena Rodriguez walked through the agricultural levels where something amazing was happening. The Delphine had shared their knowledge of aquatic farming, creating massive tanks where fish and sea plants grew in perfect balance. The Kythera had contributed their biotechnology to develop new food plants that could grow in almost any environment. Combined with human agricultural science, they were producing more food per square meter than any Council world had ever achieved. On the industrial levels, the fusion of technologies was even more impressive. Human manufacturing techniques combined with Cheery precision engineering and Althari mineral processing created factories that could build almost anything. The mining platforms that had been secretly moved from Council space were now producing raw materials at incredible rates from asteroid fields that the Council didn't even know existed. Captain Ryan Foster commanded the growing fleet that protected these new worlds. The ships looked different from anything the Council had ever seen. They combined human tactical thinking with alien technologies in ways that created something entirely new. Cathara bioarmor could heal itself after battle damage. Delphine sonar systems could detect enemies hiding behind planets. Cheery engineering made the engines more efficient than anything in Council space. But the most important changes were happening on the colony worlds themselves. Dr. Collins had established the first true multi-species cities, where different aliens lived and worked together as equals rather than in the segregated communities that the Council preferred. Human architects worked with Cathara builders to create homes that could adapt to different environmental needs. Delphine aquatic centers provided water recreation for all species. Cheery community workshops taught everyone to build and repair their own equipment. The terraforming projects were moving faster than anyone had expected. Using the Nexari crystal technology that Krex had provided, dead worlds were being transformed into garden planets in months instead of decades. Elena supervised the transformation of New Terra, a barren rock that was becoming a paradise of forests and lakes. The process was so efficient that they were already planning to terraform a dozen more worlds. Meanwhile, in Council space, problems were beginning to appear. The Zephyrian trade routes that had relied on human cargo ships were failing. Luxury, goods that had been distributed through human networks, were no longer reaching their markets. The Vorthan Collective discovered that their technology development had slowed dramatically without human innovation to drive new ideas. Smaller species were asking uncomfortable questions. The Althari ambassador had requested information about establishing their own colonies outside Council space. The Delphine were questioning why they needed Council permission to explore new ocean worlds. Even some of the larger species were beginning to wonder if the Council's decision had been wise. Strange reports were reaching Council space from long-range exploration ships. Energy signatures appeared on sensors in regions that were supposed to be empty. Construction activities were detected on worlds that no one had claimed. Most disturbing of all, some Council species were quietly sending diplomatic missions toward the galactic rim and not returning. General Nathan Clark had established defensive positions throughout the new territory that went far beyond simple protection. The military installations were also research centers where human tactics merged with alien knowledge to create entirely new forms of warfare. They weren't preparing to attack anyone. They were preparing to defend something precious. The early warning systems detected the threat first. Long-range sensors picked up massive energy signatures moving toward the galactic rim from deep space. The signatures were huge, larger than anything in Council records, and they were moving in organized formations that suggested military purpose. Clark called an emergency meeting of the Alliance leadership. Representatives from all the species gathered in New Geneva's Council chamber, a round room where everyone sat at the same level instead of the tiered hierarchy that the Galactic Council preferred. "The threat is real," Clark announced, displaying the sensor data on the central hologram. "We're tracking at least 50 large vessels moving toward our territory from beyond the galactic edge. Their technology is more advanced than anything we've seen before." Ambassador Quito studied the readings with his large dark eyes. "These are not exploration ships. The formation patterns suggest military organization." Choral singer Naya created worried bubble patterns in her tank. "The energy signatures are enormous. Each ship appears to be larger than our biggest stations." Jake Morrison, who had become the unofficial leader of the Human Alliance, looked around the room at his alien friends. "We knew this day might come. The galaxy is bigger than Council space, and not everything out there is friendly." The decision was made quickly and unanimously. The Alliance would prepare to defend their new territory and their new way of life. But as they planned their defenses, none of them realized that the approaching threat would eventually turn toward Council space as well. In the months that followed, The Alliance worked together to build defenses that combined the best of all their technologies. They established early warning networks, built powerful defensive stations, and trained their combined fleets to work as a unified force. The cooperation between species reached levels that the Council had never achieved in 10,000 years of rule. When the enemy finally arrived, the Alliance was ready to fight for something the Council had never understood: the right of different species to work together as equals, to explore freely, and to build something better than what had come before. 2 years after humanity's departure from Council space, the first reports of destruction reached Nexus Prime at 3 in the morning, Galactic Standard Time. The emergency alarms woke Council Speaker Thyros from his sleep as urgent messages flooded the communication networks. The outer rim colony of Zarion Prime was gone. Not destroyed in the traditional sense, simply gone, as if it had never existed. The 15 million colonists, the orbital stations, even the planetary defense grid had vanished without sending a single distress signal. Long-range sensors showed only empty space where a thriving world had been just hours before. Within days, 3 more colonies disappeared in the same manner. The attacks followed no pattern that Council military analysts could understand. The enemy struck without warning, left no debris, and moved on to the next target with terrifying efficiency. Most disturbing of all, the attackers seemed to possess technology that was centuries ahead of anything in Council space. Vextar, the lead Vorthan representative, called an emergency session of the Council's military committee. His mechanical form projected holographic displays showing the destruction as he spoke in his buzzing electronic voice. The enemy vessels are massive, each one larger than our biggest dreadnoughts. Their weapons can destroy entire planets in minutes. Their shields are impenetrable to our most powerful attacks. Zareth of the Mantari clicked her mandibles nervously as she studied the tactical displays. We have identified the attackers as the hegemony of Draconis, a militant empire from beyond the galactic edge. Our intelligence suggests they have been expanding through the outer regions for decades, consuming everything in their path. Thyros felt a cold fear growing in his chest. How many ships do they have? Conservative estimates suggest a fleet of over 2,000 vessels, Vextar replied, each one capable of destroying our strongest defenses with ease. The Council's combined military forces numbered fewer than 800 ships, and none of them possessed weapons capable of penetrating Draconis shields. The mathematics of the situation were simple and terrifying. The Council was facing an enemy they could not defeat. As panic spread through Council space, Thyros made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He authorized long-range reconnaissance missions to gather intelligence on the enemy, but he also ordered scout ships to investigate the regions where humanity had disappeared. If the humans were somehow involved with these new attackers, the Council needed to know. Captain Sam Reynolds commanded the scout ship Pathfinder as it crossed into the territory beyond Council space for the first time in 2 years. What his sensors detected defied all expectations. Instead of the empty wilderness they expected to find, space was filled with activity on a scale that dwarfed even the busiest Council systems. Sir, I'm reading massive construction signatures throughout this entire region, reported Lieutenant Jenny Walsh from the sensor station. Energy outputs that suggest industrial activity on dozens of worlds. There are ships everywhere, added Communications Officer Bob Carter. Hundreds of them, moving in organized patterns. These aren't exploration vessels. This is a full military fleet. Reynolds stared at the displays showing energy signatures that were impossibly large. Are these Draconis ships? Negative, sir. The technology signatures don't match. These are human vessels, but they're using technologies we've never seen before. As the Pathfinder moved deeper into human space, the scale of what they discovered became overwhelming. Entire star systems had been transformed into industrial centers. Planets that had been barren rocks 2 years ago now showed signs of terraforming on a massive scale. Most shocking of all, the scanner readings indicated that this wasn't just human activity. Dozens of different species were working together in ways the Council had never imagined possible. Intelligence Officer Maria Gonzalez worked around the clock to analyze the intercepted communications. What she discovered changed everything. "Captain, the humans aren't allied with the Draconis. They're fighting them. These communications indicate a major battle took place in the Kepler sector 3 weeks ago. The humans and their allies engaged. A Draconis fleet of over 100 ships." "What was the outcome?" Reynolds asked. Maria's face was pale as she replied. "The humans won, but at terrible cost. They lost 27 ships and over 15,000 personnel defending a system that contained nothing but asteroid mining operations." More intelligence painted an even more incredible picture. For over a year, the Human Alliance had been fighting the Draconis hegemony throughout the frontier regions. They had been losing worlds and ships, but they had also been learning. Each battle taught them more about Draconis technology and tactics. Each victory, no matter how costly, bought time for the inner regions to prepare defenses. The final piece of the puzzle came when Maria decrypted a message from Admiral Kate Sullivan to the Human Alliance leadership. "Draconis main fleet has broken through our outer defensive line. Estimate 18 months before they reach the edge of Council space. We have bought what time we could. Recommend immediate evacuation of frontier colonies and preparation of final defensive positions." Reynolds realized with growing horror that humanity had been serving as an unknowing shield, protecting Council space from an enemy that would have destroyed them utterly. Every human ship that fell in battle was defending worlds that had cast them out. Every colony that was evacuated or destroyed was saving Council lives. The scout ship returned to Council space with intelligence that shattered everything the Council thought they knew. Thyros read the reports in his private chambers, each page making him feel sicker than the last. Humanity hadn't just survived beyond the rim. They had built something incredible. More importantly, they had been fighting and dying to protect the very people who had dismissed them as dangerous and unworthy. The communication from Admiral Sullivan arrived the next day. It was brief and contained no anger, no accusations, no demands for apology. It simply provided detailed intelligence about Draconis tactics, technology, and invasion routes. The data package included specifications for defensive systems that could protect Council worlds from attack. Instructions were clear and required no payment, no political agreements, no acknowledgement of debt. At the bottom of the message was a single line that would echo in Thyros's mind for years to come. "We know what's coming your way. The outer defenses have fallen, but we've learned how to hurt them. Use this information to protect your people. It's what we would have wanted you to do for us." Thyros sat alone in his chambers, staring at star charts that showed the advancing Draconis fleet. In 18 months, they would reach Council space. When they arrived, they would face defenders who had been warned and prepared by the very people the Council had driven away. The weight of the Council's mistake pressed down on him like a physical force. They had lost more than humanity's presence in the galaxy. They had lost their honor, their wisdom, and perhaps most tragically, the chance to stand alongside the bravest species the galaxy had ever known. The Council chambers had never been so quiet. 47 species sat in their curved rows, but no one spoke as the final intelligence reports were read aloud. The holographic displays showed the advancing Draconis fleet, now only 14 months from the edge of Council space. Each red dot on the star chart represented a massive warship capable of destroying entire worlds. Council Speaker Thyros stood at the central platform, feeling older than his 400 years. The data crystal in his hand contained humanity's gift to the Council. Complete tactical analysis of Draconis technology, defensive specifications that could save millions of lives, and detailed warnings about what was coming. All of it given freely by the people they had cast out. "The situation is clear," Thyros announced to the silent chamber. Humanity and their allies have been fighting the Draconis hegemony for over 2 years. They have suffered terrible losses protecting the frontier regions. Now, their outer defenses have fallen, and the enemy is moving toward our territory. Vextar's mechanical voice buzzed through the speakers. The Vorthan Collective has analyzed the human intelligence data. Their defensive technologies are far superior to our current systems. If we implement their recommendations immediately, we might be able to protect our core worlds. Zareth of the Mantari clicked her mandibles nervously. The humans are offering this assistance without conditions. They ask for nothing in return. No political agreements, no territorial concessions, no acknowledgement of debt. The silence stretched on. Everyone in the chamber understood what this meant. Humanity was still protecting them, even after being rejected and exiled. The species they had dismissed as dangerous and unworthy was sacrificing everything to give the Council a chance to survive. Ambassador Quito of the Althari finally spoke, his quiet voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Perhaps we should consider requesting a formal alliance with the human coalition. Their combined forces might be enough to stop the Draconis advance. The suggestion hit the chamber like a physical blow. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The idea of asking for help from the species they had banished was almost unthinkable. Thyros felt the weight of leadership pressing down on him. He could see the two paths stretching ahead: swallow their pride and ask humanity for help, or maintain their dignity and face the Draconis alone. Both choices would define the Council for generations to come. The humans made their choice when they defied our authority, spoke Elder Sevrak of the Zephyrian Empire. Accepting their help now would legitimize their rebellion. It would send a message to every species in the galaxy that Council decisions can be ignored without consequences. What consequences? Ambassador Quito asked sharply. Our world's burning, our people dying. The Council has ruled for 10,000 years. But that means nothing if we're all dead. The debate that followed was unlike anything in Council history. Some species argued for immediate contact with humanity, begging for their assistance against the approaching threat. Others insisted that accepting human help would destroy the Council's authority forever. A few suggested that they should prepare to evacuate Council space entirely rather than ask for help from their former subjects. While the Council argued, another message arrived from Admiral Kate Sullivan. Thyros read it privately in his chambers before sharing it with the Assembly. The message was even shorter than the last one, but its impact was devastating. Draconis have broken through our middle defensive lines. Humanity is preparing for a final stand at the Kepler's Edge system. We estimate 12 months before enemy forces reach Council territory. Recommend immediate evacuation of border worlds. Good luck. Thyros realized that humanity wasn't just offering help. They were buying the Council time with their lives. Even now, human ships were positioning themselves for a hopeless battle that would delay the Draconis advance for a few more precious months. That night, Thyros stood alone on the observation deck of Nexus Prime, watching the stars and thinking about choices that couldn't be undone. His personal communication device showed dozens of messages from species leaders asking for his decision. Some begged him to contact humanity immediately. Others threatened to withdraw from the Council if he showed such weakness. The final transmission from Jake Morrison arrived 3 days later. It wasn't addressed to the Council officially. It was a personal message to Thyros himself. The former human ambassador appeared on the screen looking tired but determined. Speaker Thyros, I want you to know that humanity bears no anger toward the Council for your decision 2 years ago. You acted according to your beliefs and your laws. We respect that, even if we couldn't accept it. Jake paused, looking directly into the camera. I also want you to know that every human ship that falls at Kepler's Edge will fall protecting people who cast us out. We're not doing this because we expect gratitude or recognition. We're doing it because it's right. The message continued. With coordinates for a neutral meeting point, where council representatives could observe the human defense if they chose to understand what they had rejected. You don't have to come. You don't have to acknowledge what we're doing. But if you want to see what we've built out here, what we've become, you're welcome to witness it. Thyros made his decision that night. He would not contact humanity officially. He would not request their assistance or acknowledge their sacrifice. The council would prepare their defenses using the intelligence humanity had provided, but they would do it in silence. The official records would show that the council had developed these technologies independently. The emergency session that followed was brief and decisive. The council voted to implement humanity's defensive recommendations immediately while maintaining official silence about their source. Border worlds would be evacuated according to human intelligence projections. Defense fleets would be positioned, using human tactical analysis, but none of it would be attributed to the species they had exiled. 3 months later, long-range sensors detected the final battle at Kepler's edge. The Human Alliance had assembled every ship they possessed for one last desperate stand. For 72 hours, they fought against impossible odds while the Draconis fleet hammered their defenses. Thyros watched the sensor feeds from his private chambers, seeing the light signatures of human ships winking out one by one, each dying. Light represented hundreds of brave souls who were sacrificing everything to protect people who would never thank them. When the battle finally ended, the human fleet was gone. But they had destroyed nearly half the Draconis force and delayed their advance by another 4 months. The final message from the Human Alliance was transmitted on all frequencies as their last ship fell. It contained the complete specifications for a new type of defensive technology that could stop Draconis weapons. The data was sent openly, freely given to anyone who could use it to protect innocent lives. 8 months later, when the weakened Draconis fleet finally reached Council space, they met defenses they couldn't break. The Council's worlds survived because humanity had shown them how to build the right weapons and shields. But the official reports credited Council scientists with the breakthrough technologies that saved them. Thyros lived for another 40 years after the Draconis were finally defeated. He never spoke publicly about humanity's sacrifice, never acknowledged their gift, never admitted the Council's mistake. But every night, he stood on his observation deck and looked toward the galactic rim where the bravest species he had ever known had given everything to protect people who had deemed them unworthy. The Council maintained its silence, its dignity, and its authority. But they would live forever with the knowledge of what their pride had truly cost, and what true greatness looked like when it chose protection over recognition.